Hi, everybody. It's Paul from Esalen Research with you with this offboarding play in our offboarding playbook. This play is one that a lot of people are nervous about because it's all about that initial contact with the employee. So, look, why do people dread this kind of thing? Well, it's clear, right? More or less, people tend to shy away from confrontation to a certain extent or other. Okay, and the key to this play is I'm going to show you a way that it's make it not about a confrontation, but really about just kind of bringing problems and having a problem-solving mindset. That's going to be the key. Now, let me tell you what our objective is in this initial contact and in this play. What you're trying to do here is start a self-realization process for this employee. All I mean by that is you don't want this to be about you as a manager force-feeding feedback to the employee. What you want to do is present the problem and then get the employee to kind of agree and see that this problem exists. Okay, you're going to hear this in future plays as well, and I'm going to show you ways to really accelerate this idea of the employee self-realizing that there's an issue as we continue in this playbook. But this initial contact, again, you're presenting the problem for the first time. So this is my first piece of advice: is in these initial contacts, you want to be really, really tough on the problem, but really soft on the person. This is a number one technique. So if you go in and say, let's say this person's Bob. Bob, you're lazy. That's not being soft on the person, okay? That's sort of like just straight up making an accusation about their character. Instead, what you want to do is you want to be soft on the person, but tough on the problem. You can be as tough as you want on the problem. That's why I like this technique, okay? So instead of saying, Bob, you're lazy, you could come in and say, hi, Bob. I want to talk to you today about a problem that we have and a problem that I want to help you address. Okay? Notice how I'm talking about this problem as if it's a separate thing. It's not a character flaw of Bob's. It's just a problem that exists that we can work on together. Right? And then what I would do is, and this is so key, is you have to have done your homework. You're going to see this. By homework, I mean those previous two plays. You want to pick some examples from that documentation and talk about how the problem is there's a mismatch between what's expected and what was observed in these cases. So the problem is there's a mismatch here between what's expected and observed. And here's a couple examples to help illustrate this. And what I want to do, Bob, is help you address this and eliminate this problem, really. So let's work on it together, Bob. Okay? So if you do that, that's going to immediately help you diffuse any kind of defensiveness. That's your first tactic to remove the defensive posturing that can happen in these initial contacts. Let's present the problem independently and let's get people in a problem-solving mindset. Now, part of that is there's a certain skill to this as a manager. You want to make sure you are in the right mental state before even walking in the room. So some really bad habits would be, something like if you just got out of a stressful call, if your brain is in that busy problem-solving mindset coming in, it's not going to go well. You need to first start by slowing yourself down. Okay? So I highly recommend 5 minutes before the meeting at least, give yourself time to just sit quietly and breathe. Okay? A little bit of meditation just to calm your mind, because you want to be in there and have a level tone, deliver a problem-solving mindset again. And that's only going to work if you're able to control yourself. Okay? So that's really how to approach conversationally how this works. Okay, so again, come in, describe that there is a problem, describe it as a mismatch between expectations and observations with examples. Okay? And how it's going to go from here really depends on, frankly, how well you did that research. Okay? Because the problem is going to be if your observations are kind of questionable, then Bob could start arguing with you. He could say, well, actually, I wasn't late for that project. No, that's wrong. And you have to be pretty solid there. Let me give you a few pointers on what Bob might say that might help you, and I'll even tell you a story that happened to me where this can actually go really, really well. So first of all, Bob could say, look, I don't agree. Bob could also say it's somebody else's fault. Bob could say, yeah, maybe I was late, but it wasn't my fault, right? It was Judy's fault, okay? In that case, again, it comes down to the quality of the research. Maybe it wasn't Bob's fault that that he was late, but maybe the issue really was he was expected to communicate that slippage earlier. Again, what really was the management failure here? Get into that. Now, what is really interesting is if you've done your work, there actually isn't much wiggle room for argumentation, okay? Because here's the thing that's great. You need to make clear on this. Expectations are immutable, okay? This is important. So if Bob says, I don't agree, the question is, well, with what specifically does Bob not agree? Because if Bob doesn't agree with, let's say, a management expectation, sorry, Bob, those expectations aren't changing, okay? So it's important that Bob realizes that. Maybe Bob, just frankly didn't understand that expectation was there. And it's frankly pretty straightforward for a manager to say that. You could just frankly say, Bob, the expectation is if you have a schedule slip, you're going to let us know a week or two in advance of that schedule slip. That's our expectation. That's not changing, right? So make clear that those things are immutable. So if we want to solve this problem, we have to find ways to do it that get around that ironclad expectation. So once Bob realizes that, Bob could say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't like that part of my job, and I don't want to do that part of my job. This actually, if a manager hears that, that's actually a huge opportunity for you. Couple reasons why. Number one is, the question is if you've done the diagnosis right. So if you've done the diagnosis right, what'll happen is you might have thought about maybe giving Bob another role, and maybe Bob's already tried 2 or 3 roles, and it hasn't worked, or you've already tried different roles and they're not matching. This is actually great because it'll bring it to a head almost immediately. Okay. So if Bob says he doesn't want to do it, you have a choice at that point. You could say, okay, we'll try a different role for you. But if you already have, it'll bring it to a head. So let me give you an example. I had an employee, again, let's call him Bob, for which this exact thing happened. Bob simply said, well, I don't like that expectation, and I don't think I want to continue with it. And I said, well, we've already tried a few different roles for you, Bob, so we got a bit of a problem here because there's something that's expected that you don't want to do. And Bob said, yeah, I can see that's a problem. Guess what happened? 3 days later, Bob simply quit. But my point here is if you explain that the expectations are immutable, and Bob is going to realize for himself that there's not a way to make it work, okay? So that's what I mean by you can get win-win outcomes like this. It doesn't have to be a confrontation. Okay? So try those tips. Remember, things are going to ratchet more and more. You don't want to, in this meeting, say, you're going to lose your job if you don't do this. All you're doing is describing the problem, telling Bob you're going to work on the problem. And in the next play, we're going to talk about what are the concrete methods that we can do to help Bob fix it. Join me next time.